So if you have basically morally degenerate people, then that view is 250 years old, almost 300 years old. Reverend Joseph Townsend, one of the advocates for poor law reform in England in 1786. Hunger will tame the fiercest animals. It is only hunger which can spur and goad them, the poor, to labor. Yet our laws have said they shall never hunger. There was in England, around the time of the French Revolution, municipalities in which relief was pegged to the price of bread. So people wouldn't be hungry. And people complained, the new industrialists complained that they couldn't get people in the cities to do low-grade work because people had basic sustenance in these municipalities. The notion that people have to be coerced out of their dependency, I would argue, since 1995, the social assistance system has been used to coerce, starve people into low-wage jobs. That's what workfare, with 22% cuts in social assistance payments, do. How are you going to get people to take low-grade jobs that keep you in poverty unless you make living on social assistance even worse? And let's call it for what it is. They're coercion strategies. We starve people into accepting low-grade jobs. That's the moral and ethical dimension. How else do we justify cutting 22% in social assistance incomes? Blaming the poor, part 2. We've had a view, and this is 1834 report on the poor law reform. It's called the principle of lesser eligibility, that people who are not in employment should never have a standard of living that exceeds that of people in employment. Because it will lead to, look at the terms, indolence and vice. Language was so richer and full of texture 200 years ago. Indolence and vice. So therefore, the circumstances of people on social assistance, or paupers as they were then called, must never be better than those who are laborers. And here it's rearticulation in 2006 by an institute that we believe is a fellow advocate on behalf of the poor. Well, they may be in many areas, but not in this area. Because what do they argue? They create the concept of the welfare wall. And what does it mean? It creates obstacles for moving off welfare to work, and it treats working poor Canadians unfairly. We're playing off people on social assistance with people who are in the labor market. The welfare wall perversely creates incentives, listen to this, to stay on welfare, and disincentives to get and keep a low-wage job. That's what people are supposed to do. Now, there's a number of problems with this. And this is not coming from right-wingers. This is coming from people who present themselves as fellow advocates for people in poverty. And in some areas they are. In this area, they are not. What's the problem with this? 2 or 3. 1, it degrades people in poverty. It says that left to themselves, they will take a life on social assistance over a life in the labor market. Evidence is not there for that. The evidence is not there. When I wrote Crossroads for Canada, in 96, in 94, 95 is when Mr. Harris cut social assistance rates. When I wrote in 94, 58% of all parents on social assistance that was before the 22% cut were earning money. We're in the labor market. Another 13 or 14% had children who were preschool, and back then, parents, largely mothers, of children who are preschool were not expected to be employed. So the notion, and by the way, the same number in the United States, in the 90s, early 90s. So the notion that if people's living circumstances are improved on social assistance, they will not want to seek employment is not borne out by the evidence. Because people on social assistance are no different than the rest of us. They want to do something with their lives when they can. They're no different than the rest of us. The second is, it is immoral to tell people they should go and get a job that keeps them in poverty. They do it, by the way. If you're really concerned about supporting and equity for the working poor, then you would be arguing that the floor for people who seek employment is one in which, if you work full year, full time, you should have a life above poverty. That's what you would do. That's the best way to deal with being fair to the working poor. It's not fair to the working poor to say, okay, you'll be working poor, but we'll make sure people on social assistance are more miserable than you. I'm sorry, in my older age, I have to say that's immoral. To play people off against each other. The just thing is to say, yes, we should make sure that you're better off if you're employed. But better off being employed means that you have earnings above poverty. Because when you have earnings below poverty, and then we want to make sure that there is a difference between earning and not earning, then we have to keep social assistance levels so low in order to make sure that there is some gap. No surprise then with that thinking that the child benefit is clawed back in Ontario. There it is. Because if the child benefit is kept by people on social assistance as well as people in the labor market, then people on social assistance will not want to seek employment. So what we've had is a very cynical exercise in which the government of Ontario in 2003 promised to end the clawback. And that would have given people, by 2007, they were going to do it in their first term, that would be an extra $122 a month by 2007. That's what they're owed. They promised to end the clawback. Here's what they did. They never ended the clawback. What they did in July of 08 is they cut the basic needs allowance by $125. Can you get more cynical? So you say, we're not clawing it back anymore. They just cut the rate by $125. That's cynical. And then they say, oh, but we're going to give you an Ontario child benefit. But you owe them $125 a month. That's $1,460 a year. And you're offering them initially $1,100 child benefit, now $1,310. You still owe them money. And then, in addition to that, you take away their clothing allowances back to school in winter. So now you've taken away another $180 a month. So now you owe them $1,460 plus $180, $1,640. You owe them that. And you, at the end, if the Ontario child benefit is not at its peak level, you'll give them back $1,310. That's not honest, just, and fair bookkeeping. Then from 2003 on, you give 2% rate adjustments each year. In 07, you say that's to ensure that the cost of living is maintained, so that the cost of living doesn't eat away at the purchasing power of their existing rate.